Hello everybody, welcome back to Hard Mod Systems. I'm George, and today, believe it or not, a tech channel that's supposed to talk about computers is going to talk about a computer. One of the projects I've been dying to work on is related to an old PC that I built many years ago. It was one of the first ones that I built when I moved back to the city that I live in, and I used it for many years. It primarily played Warcraft and MechWarrior Online, and after several years of use it got retired to second line PC just for web browsing and media server for the TV, and eventually it ended up in the pile, and there it has sat. So we're going to try and bring it back to life, and what I would like to do is do the original build over again. Stay with the original processor, memory, motherboard, and graphics card. Currently, as the system stands, it doesn't have a power supply installed in it. And I had actually at one point changed the graphics card. So I need to switch that back. All I've done is basically put the original one back in, but I haven't test fired it without the power supply. So with that being said, let me introduce you to this build and everything about it. The first thing we're going to talk about is the case. This is the Aurora Velocity FTC. It's a mid-tower case that had lots of different things about it that I loved at the time. It has room for at least a 240 radiator in the top. It had multiple drive bays, which at that time we had lots of different things that we liked to use: DVDs, burners, and fan controllers. So it had lots of room for that. It also had a lot of storage capacity for different drives, and it even had an external SATA connector built into the top of it. The case itself was fairly well ventilated and allowed for really good airflow. Now, I never built a liquid cooling system into this computer. It was strictly used with an air tower cooler and a few fans bringing air in, and one fan using on the back to exhaust the air out. So we're going to basically stay with those things and build from there. One of the other things I loved was it had a hot swappable bays for your hard drives. Now, over the years I did do some minor case mods to it, and that removed the hot swappable options, but I kept the trays in their place without the controller board for plugging them in and out, and I just ran the cables directly to the drives. Currently it has a 3.5-inch SSD and a 5.25 floppy hard drive or platter drive. So those we're going to reuse for now. There should be an OS on the SSD, but like I said, it's been a long time since I've used it, and we're going to have to fire it up and get it running to see exactly what it has. Now we'll just take a minute and I'll give you a peek on the inside of it. As you can see, the side panel was vented and had mountings for a 200mm fan or two 120s. I never found that necessary. This machine was able to cool itself fairly well, so I never used those. Now a peek at the inside. Inside we have an Asus F1A75V Pro. Now if you look that up, you will learn quickly that this was one of AMD's FM1 sockets. That was the introduction for AMD into the market with what they called their APUs, Accelerated Processing Units, which basically meant it had decent onboard graphics built into the processor. The other really interesting thing about this generation of processor and motherboard was that you were able to buy the proper graphics cards and run them in Crossfire. So if you had the proper graphics card, you'd slap it in, you would still plug your monitor into the motherboard video out, and you could set it up to crossfire them so that they were working together to give you a boost in performance. So for that to happen, you had to have, depending on your processor, the right graphics card to do that. So the APU, or CPU in this case, is the AMD A8 3800. It's a 4-core, 4-thread processor. It runs at between 2.5 and 2.7, I do believe, gigahertz. And it has equivalent HD 6650 ATI graphics. The video card is the Sapphire Radeon HD 6670 1 gigabyte version. With that card installed, you go into Windows and you bring up your video settings, and it has an option to enable crossfire mode. The other nice thing about this motherboard is you could disable the onboard. You could go with a completely different graphics card and just use it to do the work that you needed to do with the graphics card. At one point, I did upgrade the graphics card to a Radeon R9 270, which was quite a bit better in performance than the 6670 and crossfire with the 3800. But like I said, for curiosity's sake and comparison's sake, what I would like to do is bring this back to life pretty much original to the way that I had it when I first built it. Memory wise, I went with the Corsair Vengeance 1600 megahertz DDR3. There's a 4x4 gigabyte set, so we have running in dual channel, giving us a total of 16, which at the time was really good, and I was really happy with it. As far as fans, there's just a couple of Corsair 120 mil, I do believe they're purple, lights built into the fans, not your full spectrum RGB, but it'll be good enough to get us up and running. The eventual plans with this is going to be build it, get it running as in its original state, generate some numbers as far as FPS and performance. Then what I would like to do is build a custom water-cooled system for this machine. The parts that I would like to use for that are some AIOs that I had started to do a project with, but set them aside. So I have a couple of the Cooler Master AIO pumps and cooling blocks that had to have the hoses removed from them. And what I'd like to do is come up with an interesting placement for both a 240 mil radiator, a 120 mil radiator, using one of the Cooler Master CPU blocks with pumps to provide the flow, and then install a reservoir so that we can fill it more easily and hopefully get the air out of it easily to get it up and running. And then maybe, just maybe, once that little project's done, I'd like to take this case and do a proper modern build in it. Maybe something like the new series Ryzen, maybe a 7700X with a 650 motherboard and some DDR5. But we'll see. This project could go on for a little while, or we might shift to something else once we get the custom water loop up and running in it. But that's where this project's going to start. So what I'd like to do is thank you very much for watching. Please give us a subscribe, give us a like if you liked it, give us a dislike if you didn't, and please leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what you would like me to do with this, and any ideas that you feel willing to share would be appreciated. So thank you very much. I'm George, and we'll see you in the next video.